Sorry, that's me. That's me being goofy, fucking with the volume slider on the background music. What's going on, everybody? As I'm sure you can tell by the title, usually, because that's the point of titles in YouTube videos, is to give you an idea of what the video is to be about. And I'm sure many who will watch or are watching this live have probably seen this already. But on, oh man, I can't even remember if that was Friday. I think that was Friday evening. Dave Farina of the YouTube channel Professor Dave Explains, and Dr. James Tour, who is a PhD synthetic organic chemist. What the hell is this, and where did that come from? I shouldn't be getting ads. I have ad blocker, and why are you playing the video I had paused? Sorry, this thing does weird stuff. I don't get it. It's strange. Anyway, they had a debate on the origins of life. The thesis of the debate officially being, are we clueless about the origins of life? I believe it was Dave Farina that really pushed. Why do I have? Okay, really pushed for that. So we're going to examine this debate. I was just making sure I had everything pulled up there quick. We're going to examine this debate, and we're going to see why it was a really, really, really bad debate for both of the people who were a part of it. Make sure I got my arm down. Yes, I do. I have to be honest. Everything that I saw from James Tour in this debate was exactly what I expected to see from Jim in this debate. Like, I was not surprised by his performance in this debate at all. Not even remotely. Farina, Dave, however, Professor Dave, I was very, very disappointed in his performance, where I guess he thought that rather than actually debating whether or not we're clueless about the origins of life, no, we're not, let's set that to the side and just talk about how dumb James Tour is, and how everybody in the audience is also an idiot who doesn't understand any of this. So I don't know. I don't know why he thought that was going to be an appropriate way to approach this. The Ninja Pain Train, I haven't heard anybody else in the chat talk about distortion on my mic, so unfortunately I don't know what to do. Everything seems to be fine on my end. But anyway, I was very much disappointed with the performance that Dave Farina gave in this debate. I was expecting it to at least be as informative as many of his videos on this exact subject against the person that he was debating were, even with, you know, some of those little slight digs about how James is a fraud, because there's a sense in which he is a fraud. But that's not what we got. It was all of yeah, I don't know how to fix the distorted mic. I'm sorry. I don't. Everything is fine. Everything's plugged in. Everything seems to be going good on my end. I don't know what the issue is. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, so hopefully it's not too annoying. If it is, I don't know what to do. But everything looks normal on my end. Also, what kind of distortion? Roboting, crackling in and out, popping? Like, what is it that you guys are hearing? I think I might know what it is. Hold up. My cord is kind of tapping against my my mic stem here. I don't know if that might be causing a little bit of a popping sound, but we'll see. We'll see if that fixes it. If not, genuinely, I actually genuinely don't know what the problem is. But anyway, let's well, I'm not going to go over this whole thing. This will probably be a 45, maybe an hour long stream. I don't want it to be super long. But we are going to watch Jim's and Dave's opening statements, and then there's a couple other points in the in the video that we're gonna look at that I thought were just not good points. But let's jump into this.
Good evening, everyone.
And we are going to fast forward because I don't care about all these formalities. Oh yeah, now that this guy got on stage, before we get going, one more thing I'd like to add. This guy might as well have not even been there. If I'm being honest here, let me turn my mic down just a little bit here. I have it set to the normal 100 in StreamYard, but we'll drop her to like 85 and see if that does anything. Anyway, this guy might as well have not even been present at this debate. because he didn't moderate anything. Anyway, let's see what we've got here.
Sure, Dave. Make sure you're at your new WF channel. Minutes. The debates.
Oh Lord.
For Mr. Farina.
Oh, this part we can decide. Okay.
So I have 10 minutes for an opening statement.
Excuse me.
Mr. Farina, as my guest, welcome to Rice University. Unlike Mr. Farina, I have never been in a debate before. So if it appears that I am not a skilled debater, it's an accurate assessment. A major hurdle for the origin of life research is the origin and persistence of enantiopure molecules. The building blocks of the building blocks, as I call them. Enantiopurity means that one mirror image of a molecule prevails to the exclusion of the other. This includes 19 of the 20 amino acids, the monomeric sugars, the nucleotides, and the lipids. But for the sake of getting through, I am conceding tonight to my opponent all those small molecules in 100% enantiomeric purity. They are yours. I concede them to you for the sake of time. So let's address other issues tonight, since my concession has been granted and there's still much more ground to cover. I am here defining clueless. Oh, this has gone off. All right. Hold the time a second for me while I log back in here. Have me use logs back in. Okay, but text of my typical usage. Let me open up. This is just life, you know. Typical usage. We cannot solve any of the 5 criteria needed to make a living cell. None of these can be solved. Mr. Farina has complained that I am a religious man. I'm not just religious, I'm deeply religious. Or as he puts it, I'm a, quote, super Jesus guy, unquote. Well, that's a label that I gladly embrace, and I believe that the Bible is God's word. I never appeal to that book of authority in my academic lectures or scientific discussions. Never, unless specifically asked about my religious convictions, like in a church or a religious podcast. I never couple those to my scientific criticisms of the origin of life research. I will not.
Credit where credit's due. I think that James is correct on that. I have to say, I've watched a lot of his material. I never hear him say, oh, well, that couldn't have happened naturally because God did it. Now, he might say a lot of very wrong things. He might be, what's the word I'm looking for? He might be misled about certain things. He might mislead about certain things. But I think that we have to give him credit. You don't really hear him bring his religious faith into his criticisms of origins of life. He does criticize the field on science. Now, I think that the science he's using to criticize it isn't very good, and it's pretty obvious that Jim hasn't really spent a lot of time in origins of life research, but nevertheless, I must say I don't usually hear him, I don't really ever hear him object to this on strictly religious grounds.
Not appeal to the Bible, to God, to miracles, to Jesus, to God of the gaps tonight. Often, origin of life researchers have a time of the gaps appeal, where they will say something to the effect, over millions of years, such and such happened. Those bedtime stories that are devoid of any precise chemistry may as well start with once upon a time. So I hope that my opponent will likewise not appeal to ill-defined time of the gaps arguments, and that he'll stay strictly on.
I swear to God, because God of the gaps is a thing, what these people do is they just take some word that's not God, that doesn't like really mean anything when they do this, and then put it in there and add of the gaps after it. Science of the gaps, naturalism of the gaps, time of the gaps. What do these mean? What does any of that mean?
On the scientific data, the data. As for me, I will stick to the data. The topic tonight is not about me. It's whether there is a valid hypothesis to make a living cell on a mindless early Earth.
Another thing that I wanted to point out now that I just saw it again, James Tour, let me just play it back because him saying this is very, very important considering the approach that Dave takes in this debate.
As for me, I will stick to the data. The topic tonight is not about me. It's whether there is a valid hypothesis to make a living cell on a mindless early Earth.
The debate isn't about me. The debate is about, are we clueless on the origin of life? And that's the thing that upset me the most about Dave in his presentation in this debate. Look, it's not that you're wrong. You are objectively correct, and you have already blown Tour the fuck out, like he has. But my God, you could have done more with respect to the science in this debate. Focused less on Tour, how much you think he's a fraud, how stupid you think he is, and how clueless you think he is, and stopped attacking the audience and said, look, this is what we understand. Do we have a full picture? No. We do not have a full picture. Are we clueless? No. We have a lot of information that's really helping us develop better ways of approaching the origins of life issue. And I'm really sorry that my camera is dark. I do not know what has happened to StreamYard. Absolutely nothing about the lighting in my room has changed, but all of a sudden my camera is darker. Now, I don't know if that's just from my perspective in StreamYard, but if you guys can see that as well, I did want to apologize for that. There's so many things that this is why I don't like StreamYard. There's just a lot that's out of my control. I can't go in and adjust camera brightness, and it just sucks. Anyway.
In discussing scientific data, it's not a matter of deception or lies. It is a matter of data interpretation. That happens all the time in science. It's hard to interpret the scientific literature data. And as I do with my graduate students, we learn from each other. They from me and I from them. I plan to address Mr. Farina as I would a graduate student seeking to learn from him tonight. The textbook definition for the characteristics of life is responsiveness to the environment, growth and change, ability to reproduce, having metabolism and breathe, maintaining homeostasis, and being made of cells and passing traits onto offspring. A valid hypothesis is one in which there is experimental evidence substantiating the proposed science. An invalid hypothesis is one in which there is no way to substantiate the proposed science. For example, my guest arrived to Houston from Los Angeles. A valid hypothesis would be that he flew to Houston on a commercial aircraft. That is a valid hypothesis because we can experimentally test the efficacy of commercial air travel.
I do want to say, technically, yes, but more directly, it would be a valid hypothesis because it fits very well within it fits well within the established precedent of people traveling large distances, that they take commercial flights. I mean, yes, you can test the efficacy of commercial flight, but that isn't really the reason why we would infer that Dave took a flight from, I think, California to Texas. We would infer that because of our prior knowledge and experience about how people travel, and that taking commercial flights, particularly when one needs to travel thousands, if not several thousands of miles, fits well within the established precedent for how people travel. So that would be the more immediate thing in people's mind for why suggesting that that's how Dave got here is a valid hypothesis. Now, suggesting he rode on an ostrich is a thing that's actually still entirely physically possible, but isn't a valid hypothesis. I'll leave it to you guys to try to figure out why, because that's what we do here. We think about things.
An invalid hypothesis would be that he drove here in a single molecule nanocar. Though that statement might be true, it is an invalid hypothesis since we have no experimental evidence for its validity. Nobody was present at life's origin, so we will never really know how life originated. But that's not what we're seeking to answer tonight. What we are seeking is an experimentally valid, verifiable hypothesis as to how life might have originated on an early Earth. We must see the origin of life research data, not their unsubstantiated claims, even if those claims are written in their research papers. Mr. Farina, please show us their data. Show their data. My contention remains the same. One day I presume that we will have a valid hypothesis upon which life might have originated. But as of today, we do not. And with each passing year, the cellular target that we must disclose becomes harder to reach due to the increased realization of its minimal complexity. A study in the Journal of Pragmatics in 2021 considered the trend of hyperbole in scientific publications. The authors Hyland and Jiang wrote, quote, "We trace the use of 400 hyping words which seek to promote."
What does any of this have to do with whether or not we're clueless about the origins of life, James? Like what? In the Journal of, what do you say, Pragmatics, talking about hype words and science. Dude, oh, Lord have mercy. What was it? Last year, Andrew coming into side chat's gonna know. I think it was last year. I think it's early in the year last year, the JWST paper that came out, Panic at the Disco, or Panic at the something. Yeah, sometimes scientists are a little edgy with their titles. That doesn't, and this is the thing. You gotta go beyond just the title of a paper. You have to read the abstract, then you probably want to read, the conclusion section, or the results section. Then you might want to examine the methodologies, look at the charts in the paper, and then once you've done that, you might, yes, thank you, base theory, panic at the discs. Then after that, you might fully read through the paper and then cross-reference it with any other literature, similar literature that you can find to test to see if the conclusions reached in this paper corroborate with other research that other experts have done in this area, things like that. But everybody forgets that and says, oh, but the title.
Promote, embellish, or exaggerate aspects of research papers. Our results show a massive increase in these items, and increases are most marked in the hard sciences, unquote. So while overblown statements are occurring in all fields, origin of life takes the cake. My opponent's favorite expert, Professor Lee Cronin, said in 2011 that he'd probably create life in his lab in 2 years. He did not. Another, whom he often cites, Professor Jack Sostek, then at Harvard, now at the University of Chicago, said in 2014 that he'd create life in his lab in 3 to 5 years. He did not. Professor Dimitar Seselov from Harvard University said in 2014 that life would be created in the lab in 5 years. It did not happen, not even close. Prebiotically relevant means that
Look, I could be entirely wrong, but I have a feeling either these men didn't say what he's saying that they said, or the context in which they were saying it and what they meant by what they were saying is drastically different than how James is interpreting it. Maybe they did literally mean, oh, I'm going to create life in my lab in 5 years. That could very well be the case. I just have a feeling, knowing Tour's, history, there's probably some misrepresentation going on with respect to these statements that these men supposedly made. I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am.
That we are restricted to materials, procedures, and conditions that might have been available on an early Earth. These are the 5 criteria. These are the 5 criteria that have to be experimentally addressed in a prebiotically relevant manner in order to have a valid hypothesis for life's origin. We only have time for 5 tonight. Polypeptides, polynucleotides, polysaccharides, the origin of specified information, and the assembly of the above components into an integrated, functional, living system, namely a cell, not merely a random mixture of these. If my opponent is unable to supply...
But see, this is the thing, though. And this is something that I'm probably going to repeat a few times in this video because it's a thing that I guess James Tour doesn't know about, which should give you even more of a reason to not listen to anything that he says with respect to the origin of life. And that is that, how are we defining cell? Do you mean a cell as we see them today, 4.2 billion years roughly after the start of life? Or do you mean cell as what probably would have existed 4 to 4.2 billion years ago when life first got started? Because I can assure you, as anybody with even an iota of understanding of probably basic biological chemistry would know, let alone somebody specifying or specializing, in origins of life research, that the earliest cells that would have developed would probably very, very, very little resemble cells today. There would be major, major differences in their structure, the various functions that go on in them, all sorts of things. So what do you mean by cell here, Dr. Tour? I think that would be an important term you'd want to define.
Apply all 5 criteria for life. then we're currently clueless on the origin of life. But since I don't think he'll be able to supply even one of the 5, it will show that we're not merely clueless, but utterly clueless. While some would like to portray me as one of the very few people that does not accept the hyped claims of origin of life researchers, I maintain that overconfident supporters of origin of life, like my opponent, are being abandoned by the origin of life research community itself. For example, Mr. Farina's own experts, whom he likes to cite, are now backing away from their own overblown claims. His often cited origin of life expert, Professor Jack Sostek, now says that aside from nature's construct of RNA, invoking of, quote, autocatalytic sets was never chemically realistic, unquote. Hence, the prebiotic relevance of autocatalytic sets crumbles. It's over, according to Professor Sostek. His often cited origin of life expert, Professor Donna Blackman, now acknowledges that there are no known prebiotically relevant autocatalytic reactions that greatly enhance chirality of a substrate. The increases are minor, so no need to waste our time tonight on autocatalysis. His own origin of life expert, Professor Stephen Benner.
Hold up.
It's over, according to Professor Sostek. His often cited origin of life expert, Professor Donna Blackman, now acknowledges that there are no known prebiotically relevant autocatalytic reactions that greatly enhance chirality of a substrate. The increases are minor, so no need to waste our time tonight on autocatalysis.
Wait, but doesn't autocatalysis have other important relations to origins of life besides merely chirality? I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure autocatalysis has a lot more relevance to origins of life than just that. And if it does, why would James single that specific thing out? That's interesting.
His own origin of life expert, Professor Stephen Benner, an enormous figure in this field, now says that any group of randomly synthesized RNA molecules would afford, quote, 10 million or 100 million more molecules that catalyze the destruction of RNA, unquote, than catalyze the copying of themselves. And, quote, this will never give you life, unquote. Hence, the relevance of random RNA to make copies of itself bites the dust. It's over, according to Professor Benner himself. Origin of life expert Professor James Shapiro now writes, certain questions like the origins of the first living cells currently have no credible scientific answers, unquote. Evolution kingpin, Professor Richard Dawkins now says, quote, we know little more than Darwin did about how it got started in the first place. Yeah. We have no evidence bearing upon the momentous event that was the start of evolution on this planet, unquote. My opponent's favorite origin of life expert, Professor Lee Cronin, now writes and says on multiple occasions that, quote, origin of life research is a scam, unquote. And, quote, there are lots of layers to the scam, unquote. A scam means a dishonest scheme or a fraud. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Grayson, you're right. This is nothing. This is just literally, oh shit, quote mining. Just, hey, well, this person says this, and this person says that, and this person says that, and this person says this, that. Okay, and I thought you were going to focus on the research, not what researchers are saying, and taking, their quotes out of context.
It's as if Professor Lee Cronin has been scientifically born again. Mr. Farina, I respect your courage to be here tonight. It's too bad that origin of life researchers are not here themselves to defend their own data. Maybe they know that.
Well, I'm sure that's probably because they're busy doing actual research in this field that James isn't doing and James doesn't know about, and don't consider James even remotely a large enough threat to the kind of research that they're doing or the legitimacy or validity of it to waste their time having a debate with him. They also know the kind of attitude he's going to have in the debate, and that's going to be entirely unprofessional and a complete waste of their time when they could be actually doing some real research that James isn't in this field. That's why they're not debating you, James. They don't care about you and the dumb things you have to say about a field you don't know anything about.
The shallowness of their own research, while the less informed cannot assess the shallowness. I'm looking forward to seeing the data with chemical specificity. That's what I will be asking of you, so I'm telling you up front. Not the overblown titles, not their outlandish claims, not the once upon a time over 1 million years stories, but the data to propose a valid hypothesis to the 5 criteria needed to build a living cell thereby overcoming our cluelessness.
What do
on
we mean by
origin of
sell?
life. Thank
Again.
you.
Mr. Farina, your opening statement.
Starting now. Hi, everyone. Thanks to Rice University for having us here tonight. We are here because of James Tour. James is a chemist and also an apologist who lies about origin of life research on the internet. It's quite the double life. In order to understand why he does this, we turn to his faith. James has admitted publicly that he is a creationist. He believes that God created life due to religious scripture, which to him takes priority over scientific evidence. From his website, faith and belief go beyond scientific evidence for this scientist. Anyone who thinks this is not relevant to the discussion is delusional, as James is openly admitting that there's no science that could ever be done that will convince him that life was not directly created by God. He is.
Now, see, what I would say is I don't think this is relevant. James himself pretty much acknowledged all of this, which I actually think was a good move on his part. And then he said, well, this debate isn't about me or what I believe. It's about what the data says. And I think that the data does not say anything meaningful that gives us reasons to think that we have any idea what we're doing. I think James is wrong on that, and just saying, well, if you disagree, you're delusional. That's not an argument. That's just like an overtly dismissive attitude of people who might think, well, no, I really don't think that going on about how he's a religious man is relevant to, I mean, did anybody else hear James bring up anything having to do with religion or God in what he said, other than addressing at the beginning that he is a religious man, but that this isn't relevant to the discussion? Outside of that, he didn't say anything. I don't think this is relevant.
Is ideologically bound to denying abiogenesis. He sometimes pretends to leave room for it, as he did just now, to seem open-minded, but he isn't. He's totally dogmatic. Therefore, his opinions on origin of life research are irrelevant, as he is approaching the field not as a scientist, but as a preacher. Of course, James pretends his rhetoric is scientific. He will bring up his H-index and list of publications. Less important is the fact that he has publicly admitted that his students do all the work and he slaps his name on the papers. More important is the fact that none of his research has anything to do with origin of life whatsoever and does not qualify him in this topic, which is not strictly synthetic organic chemistry as he claims, but also astronomy, geology, physics, and lots of other areas James is clueless about. When it comes to this topic, James is a YouTuber. His embarrassing commentary takes place exclusively on YouTube or in-person events for science-illiterate Christians who share his biases and delusions. James knows that science is done through the primary scientific literature, and he knows that his inability to publish anything on this topic makes him completely irrelevant. That's why he regularly lies and pretends that he is published in this area, and his papers are ignored because of conspiracy. These papers are actually blog posts in Inference Review, launched by Discovery Institute propagandist David Berlinski, which is not peer-reviewed and exists for the sole purpose of making pseudoscience appear more legitimate. Jim's clueless ramblings do not even remotely resemble primary scientific literature, but he lists them among his actual science on his website anyway. Of course, when facing this topic, James somehow forgets what primary literature is supposed to look like. That's how he initially got into hot water, slandering Nobel laureate Jack Szostak. James was complaining about the prestigious journal Nature and what Szostak allegedly published in it, and how it doesn't meet the typical standards of the journal. He called Jack a liar multiple times, to the delight of his clueless, cackling audience. In actuality, it wasn't primary literature at all, but a web article meant for lay people, and there were no lies or inaccuracies, as James continues to claim to this day. His profoundly unprofessional and defamatory behavior has only gotten worse, as he now regularly attacks prominent researchers in this field or blatantly misquotes and misrepresents them. And that's why we're here, to highlight Jim's fraudulence. There is nothing to debate. The question as to whether we are clueless about the origin of life is idiotic. We aren't. Apologists.
And see, this was one point where I was like, okay, so Farina's not actually gonna like explain how we're not clueless about the origins of life. He's just gonna ramble about Tour the whole time, because he just effectively admitted that. He just effectively admitted right there that we're just here. We're here because of James, and we're here to talk about how dumb he is when it comes to this subject and how he's just a lying fraud. We're not here to discuss any actual science because we're not clueless about the origins of life. But that's the very claim that you're here to defend. And then you're just not going to, and just talk about how your opponent is a dumb fraud liar the whole time. Like, that's what you do in a professional debate. My Lord.
like James train viewers to regurgitate the ridiculous.
And look, everything that Dave is saying is right. Like, James Tour is a fraud. He consistently attacks leading researchers in this field. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. He lies all the time. Dave is wrong with what he's saying. It's just that, my God, man, this isn't the point of the debate. Like, I understand if you did it like you did in your videos where you talk all the science and then do these little jabs at Tour. That is what I expected, but it's just all jabs and no science. That irritates me. I wanted him to present legitimate science and discuss it and break it down and say, this is how we know about all these things. Does it give us a full picture? Absolutely not, but it shows we aren't clueless. And then he could have ended by saying, and the fact that James doesn't ever tell anybody about all this stuff, yada, yada, rama, rama, ding dong, is how we can know that he's a fraud and is largely rejecting the development of origins of life research because of religious reasons relating to his belief that life is divinely created by God. That's how we should have approached it, but it's not. And the reason that I'm a little upset by it is because I like Dave a lot. I was expecting a lot more from him. And I think that he had the opportunity to really fucking shut James out on this. And he fucking fumbled it.
Lie that there's been no progress since the Miller-Urey experiment of the 1950s. In reality, we have multiple viable prebiotic synthetic pathways to all the relevant biomolecules and their polymers. And systems chemistry is showing us how sets of these molecules can have evolved over millions of years to produce the first protocell, which we will discuss later. James knows essentially nothing about any of it, but pretends to for his viewers who take him on blind faith, something they are quite comfortable doing. So we will get to James fumbling the science in a moment, but first it is important to establish that James is a brazen liar and charlatan in ways that everyone can understand without knowing anything about science. For example, part of Jim's script is to complain about the primordial soup model. He describes this as lightning striking some water and molecules form a slithering creature that crawls out. This is the dumbest straw man in history. Yet he insists that all these textbooks say precisely this, and it is taught to undergraduates as well as graduate students. In actuality, the textbooks look like this. They contain summaries of much of the research we will discuss momentarily: syntheses of biomolecules, ribozymes, autocatalysis, and other complex concepts. So he's just lying. He's trying to make science he doesn't like seem infantile and stupid. Another way he downplays the validity of the field is to pretend that almost no one is working in it. He claims it's a boutique field with no more than a dozen teams examining the problem. That's a lie. There are thousands of scientists working on this all over the world. He needs to lie about this because it's much more difficult to claim that thousands of scientists are all either corrupt or stupid, while only James knows the truth. A dozen is much easier to swallow, so he lies. He also pretends to be well-read in the subject. He isn't. He has admitted that he's read less than 5% of the literature on the topic, although in reality, over 3 million papers have been published since 2016, so he's read maybe 0.001% of the literature. More importantly, for the few papers he has read, the diligence he projects is a facade. As to anyone knowledgeable, he reveals a level of incompetence that is shocking for someone of his stature. Take, for example, this study by Stephen Benner, a researcher James regularly slanders. Here, Benner was showing nucleotide polymerization over basaltic glass to form RNA. James notes that Benner washes the glass thoroughly with hydrogen peroxide and ultra-pure water, and then throws his hands in the air about how this makes the study not prebiotically relevant because he is washing away trace magnesium that would impede nucleotide polymerization on the early Earth. In his profound ignorance, James neglects to realize that basaltic rock is specifically rich in magnesium, information that anyone who had taken Geology 101 would know. Furthermore, he wonders where, oh, where could one find hydrogen peroxide and ultra-pure water on the early Earth, as though its use makes the study not prebiotically relevant. In reality, these are used to destroy biological material like bacteria that would contaminate the results. So, in fact, the washes are done specifically to make the experiment prebiotically relevant.
I think that is also an important point to touch on, because you'll hear from the people who object to origins of life research all the time about how, well, they've got to do all this purification, and they have to buy these specific chemicals and these specific forms, and they have to do all these contrivances that are related to the experiment. And it's like, yeah, That's what we have to do to get the environment to look like the Earth did 4 fucking billion years ago, because it obviously isn't like that now. So yeah, there has to be purification, there has to be cleaning, there has to be sanitation. You're going to want chemicals that might have a slightly different structure, though being in the same category of chemical, because that's what they would have looked like 4 billion years ago versus now. There's all these things that are done specifically, as Dave just said here, specifically to make these studies much more prebiotically relevant by allowing the environment, setting up the environment in a way where it much better mimics the prebiotic environment rather than the contaminated one of the Earth that we see today.
This example is crucial because James will focus much of his empty criticism on claiming that research is not sufficiently prebiotic. But remember this example where James was so clueless that he does not even understand what the researchers are doing and why. This is his primary tactic. He skims the supplemental section of a paper, invents a technical flaw out of thin air, and pretends it negates the results of the paper, and by extension, origin of life research in general. But it gets much worse. James regularly botches concepts not just in geology, but also in his own field. For an example, we return to Benner's research where he synthesized ribose in prebiotically relevant fashion. James doesn't like it one bit, and when confronted with a 13C NMR spectrum demonstrating the presence of ribose, he not only pretends the data is invalid, but he goes to town with meme after meme, cartoon after cartoon, childishly mocking Benner for his garbage data. Here's his laughing Spanish guy meme where the whole crowd laughs in unison at the idiot Benner who thinks he got ribose when it's actually a mess of a billion compounds. But the joke is on James, as his pathetic commentary reveals that he can't even read a 13C NMR spectrum, something he should have learned as an undergrad. James compares the spectrum to that of pure ribose when the sample is ribose borate, a different compound, with broad peaks due to rapidly interconverting forms. The billions of compounds are actually just noise, as the vertical axis is expanded to highlight the wider peaks.
Personally, I would say that it's not that James doesn't know all this, it's that he's lying about it because he's trying to push a particular notion, a particular narrative.
Abject failure has been confirmed by every chemist I've corresponded with, from Benner himself to J. William Suggs, Professor Emeritus of Chemistry at Brown University, and many others. The idea that James can't do something that an undergrad could do is astounding, and whether his brain ceases to function when examining this research, or he is deliberately lying to a gullible audience with no clue what he's talking about, his credibility is reduced to 0 with this example alone. So that's a brief summary of James' tour. He's a toxic individual and pathological liar who actively promotes science denial and slanders diligent researchers. Or in my case, he scours the internet for clips of me in music videos to commit character assassinations, or unleashes a barrage of insults about how Dave doesn't know chemistry, even though most of his students use my organic chemistry tutorials to get through his unbearable course.
I will say that right there was a fucking hard ass burn from Dave. That is like the one thing that Dave said where I was like, yes, that was a good thing to say.
He baselessly shouts hype when his own research is full of hype. He whines about being accused of believing in the God of the gaps when he objectively does. He publicly calls for the halting of an entire field of science he doesn't understand, just to shelter his fragile, archaic faith. But today, finally, with no desk to hide behind, every tactic will be elucidated in real time, and he will be made accountable for his lies for everyone to see. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I will.
All right. So that was the introduction. Where was the other part that I wanted to go? Is this it right here? I think it might have been. Let's see.
If you're going to run a C13 NMR of ribose, you want the ribose to be as pure as it can possibly be. But
he was doing chemistry on borate minerals. That's why it was ribose borate.
So now it's your turn to ask.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll get back to the peptides in a second because that was my second prompt. But let me...
Yeah, I think this was the spot where James goes off a little bit.
1 minute. Okay. We'll continue looking at research in a moment, but first I can't resist confronting James about some of these lies he's been telling. So let's list a few and get some answers. So first, the textbook thing. Primordial soup model is lightning and then a slithering creature crawls out. And that's what all these college level textbooks say. Again, no, they don't. He made that up like a liar. Next, this boutique field of a dozen researchers thing. Of the millions of papers that comprise this field, I went through a handful of the ones I've read and made this list. There are thousands more. Pretty dumb lie, huh? And let's add one more. When I had some scientists on my content to help expose James as a fraud, one of them was a friend of mine, organic chemist Bruce Lipschitz, who explained how James was objectively wrong about peptides being unable to form in water, as I just showed you, which I'll prove with about a dozen papers, or I did, and will continue to do so. This hurt James so badly that he spun a ridiculous lie about how I took an unrelated clip of Bruce and stuck it in my content behind his back. This was so idiotic that I had to get Bruce to make another statement specifying that I requested the clip from him and that I had permission to use it, though James did not have permission to share their email exchange. In his emails with James, Bruce explicitly states that he was responding to the claims James had made. There it is in red, but his viewers can't read, so they just ate up the fabricated story. Now, again, remember, I'm demonstrating conclusively that James is a pathological liar. This is important because James also lies about science that goes over most people's heads. So by proving to you what a liar he is, you are now primed to realize how he is lying about all the complex details of origin of life research as well. This way, you won't just nod your head and assume James must be right. So let's begin. Let's begin with the textbook thing. Why would you tell this dumb lie, James? Why would you tell this lie?
You think you've been taught things that aren't the whole thing about molecules in the puddle. Okay, so there is a primordial soup model, and there is no understanding of what's happening in this primordial soup. And you talk to people, and this is exactly what they see. They talk about the primordial soup model in all of these textbooks. That's your question.
This is the primordial soup model. It just means some molecules in water. That's what it means.
Look, you were absolutely clueless. On
what is this?
You never gave me the coupling for that reaction. I want you to know.
Yeah, when he asked Dave, hey, write on the board and show me this, and it's like, what does this have to do with? What does this have to do with origins of life? Oh my God, this is just freaking hilarious.
I'm going to narrate this
in a bad way.
Now. I want you to notice he didn't answer the question. I invited him to come up to show me the chemistry, how this is done.
No,
he did not. He did not. And now you want me to say, so now this is the question. The question is, I just told you the primordial soup model is nonsense, and this is in these textbooks, and this is taught over and over again.
Turning into slithering creatures is in textbooks? Show me the textbook. Show me the textbook that says molecules form into slithering creatures.
Because this is exactly the model that the molecules come together. These form higher organisms that come out of the water.
Molecules form higher organisms that come out of the water. How can you listen to someone like this and think that they have anything meaningful to say? James obviously has no fucking understanding of anything in origins of life research, which is really sad because he is actually quite an accomplished synthetic organic chemist. And then this just incessant caterwauling that he's doing is oh my Lord. I was laughing a lot when I went back and watched this.
Higher organisms that come out of the water.
Yes.
Show me the textbook that shows
I don't have the textbook. I showed you. There they are. There they are. The smelly soup model. You have the list right there.
James, I showed
That's from my video. You have the list.
This is what the textbooks show. Ribozymes, autocatalysis, all the things that you
No. Go back to my slide. Go back to my slide. There. Go back.
No, this is
No. Go one forward. You show the text. All right. Now don't change it. Now, which textbook were you referring? Because I said right there, it says miniature C, prebiotic soup. Those are quotes from each one of those books.
And do they show molecules forming a slithering creature? No, they don't, because that's a lie. And you're not going to run out the clock. How about the dozen people thing? Does that look like a dozen people to you?
What I meant by that, the number of people that are doing the complex organic Sutherland Pounder type synthesis. This is exactly what Benner told you.
No.
Benner told you
People
that
all
it's
over
a
the world.
very
Benner
small.
told me.
Yes,
I
it
have-
does.
Benner told you on the video that there's a small number of people that are still doing the Sutherland type of complex synthesis. He says most of the area
Origin
is
of
not
Life
doing that
community is a
anymore.
boutique community. It's a small number of people. It's a dozen people.
It was in
That's what you
reference
said.
to
No.
the number of people that are doing the complex Sutherland. Be a wrong linkage. You would never code for a peptide with
Yes,
that.
this is the other
How
part.
do you know?
Nope.
It says functional RNAs. You have
Because
no
it's
idea
a
what
trace,
RNAs do.
because it doesn't work.
Do you understand that
The
RNAs have
alignment is
catalytic
not right.
function? Do you understand that
No,
RNAs have
even if
catalytic
you have
function?
the wrong enantiomer, it doesn't work. Even Donna Blackman has said that in the papers
You
that
have
you
no
cited.
clue what Donna Blackman says. You quote mine her. You have no idea what her research is about. You just pretend to.
Okay, so there we go. I asked
Still,
him to come
look,
up here and
Shostak
show me
is
the
linkage
chemistry, just like I
heterogeneity.
would do with a
Oh,
graduate
back to the
student. I said,
chalkboard.
show me the
Recognition and
chemistry.
catalytic
He did
function.
not.
Lord of mercy.
I mean, you
Done.
can say that.
Done. You can't do this. You can't make
You
a
can
cell.
say
You
that,
can't
you
do
can
that.
cheer,
You can't make
but
a cell.
you're just
It's
lying.
over, buddy. It's over.
Wow. Lies and cheers. Amazing. Lies and cheers.
So
Incredible.
just from a chemical point of view, though, we would need to know what functional RNA meant.
Having
Function and
catalytic properties.
Function, I mean, because RNA has
Yeah, Dave is right there. Having catalytic properties. That's a functional RNA.
many functions.
It still has
So-
recognition and catalytic function. It lowers the melting point of the duplexes by destabilization, so separation can occur under reasonable conditions.
And what was the percentage? You got everything else written down. What was
James,
the?
I'm
I don't
sorry
know.
that- I'm sorry
I
that
don't
I
know.
don't have an
You know,
encyclopedic
Benner's
knowledge
very
of
careful.
hundreds
He
of
would tell
papers.
us. It's
Okay.
in that paper because
But
that's what Benner.
you're
I mean,
basically
Shostak
calling
got
Shostak
upset
a
with
fraud.
Benner because he didn't do it.
But
Shostak would put that in the
No,
paper.
that's another great one. The Benner thing. Yeah, we're going to get to the Benner one.
okay,
because-
it's time to end that part, but I want to just pause. To have functional RNA, it has to do at least three things. It has to serve as messenger RNA, ribosomal RNA, and
No. Messenger RNA.
Yeah, I don't know what this guy's taught. This moderator was just so fucking. I don't even know, man. Like, what was this guy doing?
Messenger RNA. You're talking about features of modern cells. We're talking about prebiotic
but
nucleic
ultimately
acids.
has to do that. So what function is my question? Did he show that
What?
it
Okay, no.
Uh,
it has to at least
I mean,
perform one of the three? Ultimately, it's going to have to perform all three.
Yeah, I mean, it's replication. I'm not sure exactly in the context of the paper, but he's saying that 2' linkages don't matter. As though you people have any fucking clue what any of us are talking about.
And when I was watching this live, that is the moment that I stopped watching. Because why would you do that? Why would you even acknowledge hecklers in the audience? Like, nobody cares. Why? What is this? What are we doing here?
Oh, show him. Here are some of the papers that we've been talking about. He keeps trying to talk about side chains because he hasn't admitted yet that this does happen. Peptide formation with prebiotic chemical activators. There are countless studies generating this. So the objections, like the reactions from side chains, I'm very sorry, but they have been addressed, showing regioselective coupling even for lysine. When he objects to this, he's just lying about what the paper is about. Then don't forget condensation by wet-dry cycling, as well as totally alternate synthetic pathways that don't involve condensation. Next, plenty of studies show prebiotic syntheses of nucleotides, and their adsorption and polymerization on clay has been studied for decades. These catalytic surfaces also protect RNA from degradation. This type of chemistry has been taken out of the lab and shown to work in prebiotic analog conditions, primarily hot springs where biopolymers form efficiently and become encapsulated in vesicles. James ignores all of this research and just complains about aspects of experimental setup, like running reactions under argon, which is done specifically to avoid contact with the oxygen.
Where was the
wasn't
other one
present
that
on the
James
early Earth.
absolutely
Or
freaks
he
out?
pretends prebiotically plausible reagents like DAP are not prebiotically plausible
I can't
by only
remember.
showing research from the 1950s instead of current research. He will wonder how nature knew to phosphorylate the 5' hydroxide sulfur trioxide.
Bring up another picture.
Are you saying sulfur
You came
trioxide
with,
is not
with rapid
prebiotically
fire.
relevant?
I only remember this one. Do you have another question for me?
Huh?
You have another question for me?
The
Come
question,
on, bring it on.
There's no question. I explained a bunch of research about peptides and RNA that
forgot
you're
that part.
pretending isn't real. right? You're just shifting the goalposts about lysine, and I'm showing you another paper.
Mr.
where Pounder
Farina!
got it.
Here!
What
go,
do you
go,
want me-
go, go, go! You don't do it! You just talk.
Why
Show
would
me
I
the chemistry.
Why would I try
This-
to
yeah,
I
draw
told you I
yeah.
would speak to you.
This is what
as
I want
would
everybody
speak
to
to
see.
any graduate.
Like that was insane. Right as Dave was calling him out, that was another point where I did actually like what Dave was doing. Dave was calling him out, and then all of a sudden, Mr. Farina, and he just he has a meltdown. Oh my god, dude. This is just so unbecoming of a PhD scientist. Oh Lord, have mercy.
Student,
If
and I would
I-
tell them to come to the
If
board
I
and
wrote
write.
this,
Come to the board and
if
write.
I wrote
Show me
this
the chemistry.
scheme on the board, would you suddenly accept it? Why are you so obsessed with me using
Because
chalk?
you can't show a chemistry that's going to give you the 3-5 to the exclusion of the 2-5.
You're
You mentioned
jumping
around
around like crazy.
and I showed you
This is called the
37%.
Gish Gallop, everybody. This is called the Gish Gallop. Oh, peptides? You got peptides? Okay, you don't get the lysine residue. Oh, you got the lysine residue? Well, you can't get the 2' linkages. Oh, they got the 2' linkages? They can't get this. This is his tactic. I'm showing a mountain of research that invalidates all of his objections, and he's just denying it. I don't care what any of you guys are saying. None of you.
Then stop responding. You see, there's periods where Dave is like, okay, yeah, you're getting some stuff, and you ruined it because you decided to go off on somebody and just stop. Oh my God, stop doing that.
Have any capacity to read this literature, and you're just blindly believing James. You have no idea what he's talking about.
Let's close this session. I have a couple of comments. One is we'll have the opportunity for the audience to ask questions at the end. So we'd appreciate it if the audience would not ask questions at this point.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Number one. Number two, I want to make sure everybody in the audience understands the term exergonic and endergonic. So that has to do with the free energy change, the standard free energy change in a chemical reaction. If the standard free energy change in a chemical reaction is negative or exergonic.
Wait, oh shit, what does James do here?
This
Oh, yeah.
This hydroxyl did not participate. This hydroxyl did not participate. This hydroxyl do not participate. In order to do this biologically, not prebiotically, but biologically, you have to use an enzyme that has about 1,000 amino acids in it. So the probability of that forming randomly would be 20 to the 1,000th. I mean, it's just a crazy big number. If something's bigger than 10 to the 50th, you don't have enough time in the universe. Here, you wouldn't have enough time in a billion universes. Is there any chemistry that you can show me that's prebiotically relevant that would do this coupling? And you will say, oh, I argue that only enzymes can do this. You don't have any enzymes because you couldn't make them here. You couldn't make them there. No enzymes. You're lost. We already established you don't have enzymes. There's no enzymes. You couldn't make them. You're clueless on that.
Oh shit.
Okay, well,
Time is up.
Oh my God.
I showed peptide formation and I showed RNA formation, and this entire talking point is a
When you
non-starter.
can't do it with half of the amino acids, you didn't make it with the peptides. When you
No.
can't control that 2,5 linkage that's 30 to 70% 2,5, you haven't made any functional nucleotide.
Okay,
so
you're
you don't
calling
have those two.
You're calling Shostak a liar because functional RNA was the first two words in the title of the paper. So you are actively calling.
You remember what I
Shostak
told you
a
about the
liar
title of papers?
again.
Remember what I told you about?
Again.
It's a bunch of hype. That's why I said, Mr. Farina, show us the data. Show us the data. And you said you read the paper and
I
you
did,
couldn't
though.
find out.
I showed you a bunch of
couldn't find
papers
in
and-
there how much 2,5 he has.
You just start
Shostak
shouting.
is very careful. He would supply that
Okay,
number.
James. So check it out. You're completely unhinged and wrong about everything we said about polypeptides and polynucleotides. However, let's take that out of the equation, okay? Because you said you're going to give me all the molecules, whatever you said earlier. Will you concede that this is a perfectly viable explanation for biologically relevant polysaccharides?
You only came out with that in your second series. In your first video on me, on your first video,
Second
you
series.
said these just keep hooking on the end. Only when I nailed you on it did you come out in your second one and say, "Oh, I meant it had enzymes." Okay, and in truth, with enzymes you can get it, but you don't yet have
You're
enzymes.
talking about peptides.
You don't
You're
have
just lying
enzymes.
about what I
That's
said.
why I put polysaccharide number 3 to show that you could make
so
enzymes.
You're wrong, and we do have enzymes, but if you'll grant me the enzymes,
I'm going to keep this
anyway,
plan.
in this
I'll be
magical
right
world that
back.
you've invented,
30 seconds.
Where will you concede that this is a perfectly viable explanation for biologically relevant polysaccharides? Enzymes did it, just like they do today. Can you wrap your head around that, James?
Give me a minute to wrap my head around.
Give you a minute
it,
to know
please.
what enzymes are and what they do.
Just give me.
If enzymes exist, can we get biologically relevant polysaccharides? Yes or no?
Here is the enzyme
the answer is
that
yes.
do this. This is the enzyme that does this. It is 98 kilodaltons. It's 20 to the 842. That's 10 to the 1094 possible scenarios. If you have anything more,
is that the enzyme that does this
10
today,
to the
or is that the
50th,
enzyme
you don't
that
have
did this
enough
4
time
billion years
in our
ago?
universe in 14 billion years.
Wow, big numbers,
Yeah,
guys.
big numbers. So this is the type of enzyme that you would have to have.
So this is an enzyme that exists today.
Yes.
And is the
he silated it with this N-O-bis trimethylsilyl-trifluoroacidamide. He silated it, he ran compounds, and he made 200 mers. That would give you 10 to the 120 different RNA molecules. 10 to the 120. Remember, 10 to the 50, 10 to the 90 is the number of elemental particles in the universe.
Okay, we're a little
in the
bit
universe.
These numbers are
This guy made
Dr.
10 to
Jordan.
the
Meaningless for
120
shock value.
different molecules. It's totally useless. Totally useless.
Have you seen?
So, who asks now? Okay.
Is that me? All right. Let me get to my chirality. Living organisms use L amino acids for proteins and D sugars for nucleic acids.
I've given you all the chirality. I've given it to you.
Yeah, this is my 2 minutes, James. Keep quiet. So first, it should be noted that Dave doesn't know chemistry. Farina had to teach James the definition of homochiral. He was using it improperly. But more importantly, James either fumbles or ignores all the research in this area. This all started when I cited a singular paper talking about stochastic crystallizations of amino acids. In his context,
says this. That's not what she meant. She's just using this as poetry in the sense that she says.
Blending now, people using homochirality when they mean enantiomerically pure, and vice versa. So
I've never heard anyone say homochiral glucose and have that mean something accurate.
and we used to talk about stereospecific reactions and stereoselective reactions, and those have become blended now. They have very
those also mean different things.
Firm definitions, but they're unfortunately used interchangeably, and that happens with. That's already happened.
That's just an error, though, because they do have very specific definitions.
But organic chemistry is a language, and language change.
What?
Changes as well over time. So.
Yeah, but specificity and selectivity mean different things. So I think we should push back on people.
Stereoselectivity and stereospecificity.
Yeah, or
Okay,
regiospecificity.
can we get on, because we got to.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Specified information is the next piece. Specified information. We have to have some information for the coding in a cell. Here is Lee Cronin, your favorite counselor on origin of life. Here's what he says. He says, because there's some contingent information embodied outside the genome. He goes through and he says how people have claimed to have made cells. This is where he's explaining what he means by origin of life research is a scam. It is a scam. I say they're clueless. He says scam. Take whichever term you want. This is his favorite guy. He's come around. He's born again now. He says, but coming back to the scam is if we just make this RNA.
Yeah, this is just James not understanding what Cronin was talking about in that discussion. I'm pretty sure I saw that discussion because that was on Lex Friedman's podcast or whatever it is that he has. Yeah, that I don't recall Lee Cronin using that to mean like a legitimate scam. He was, I don't know if you'd call it speaking tongue in cheek or, somewhat facetiously, but he was not literally saying that what we're doing is a scam and we can't do that. That wasn't the context there.
Hey, we've got this. This fluke event. We know how that's simple. Let's make the phosphodiester. Let's make ATP. We've got. He facsimile. The lab biologist cannot make a cell from scratch. specified information.
Researcher. Okay, so Venter is a synthetic biologist. He's not an origin of life researcher. So that is not actually terribly relevant. There's some overlap, but that's not how life began. So when you take extant life and strip things away, that is not directly addressing the origin of life. So you're
Where's
taking
the
a completely
information?
Very, very good point, Dave.
different field. Information is in nucleic acids and peptides.
No, that is like that.
Nucleic acids don't convey information? Are you joking?
There is no information there to give you the prescription you need.
What do you mean, no information?
Because what I'm telling you is it has what is called Shannon information. It's information from randomness, which is not
The
specified.
sequence of monomers
You need
is the
specified
information.
This man is
Yeah, but what is specified information? That's the thing, James. What do you mean by specified information? So there's a lot of the word information can be used differently by computer scientists, by physicists, by chemists, by linguists, by philosophers. There's a variety of ways to use the term information. And there may be some overlap between them, but they're not all the same. What does specified information mean?
seeing it. Even Benner.
The sequence
you want to
of
quote
monomers
what
is
Benner
the
says about
information.
this? I have that quote too. Benner sees the same thing that I'm seeing. He says it's
James,
informationless.
I find it hilarious that you continue to pretend that origin of life researchers are pretending that origin of life research is invalid. Don't you think that's a really dumb lie to be telling? You're definitely just pretending. You're taking, he's having a lighthearted podcast conversation, and you're pretending that Lee Cronin is going, origin of life research is stupid. All of my work is stupid. Why would you think anyone would believe that? This
Okay,
is
here he
idiotic.
is. He wrote it. Here he puts up this tweet. Origin of life research is a scam. Somebody says, why? He says, because no one is really trying to actually answer the question or thinks it can be done.
Okay, so
There it is, Lee Cronin.
yeah, an origin
He's
of life
sitting in his office
researcher
tweeting
is
this stuff.
an origin
This
of
is what
life
I'm talking
researcher
about.
is admitting that his entire body of work is meaningless. That is really
No, he's not saying
He's
his entire body
clearly
of work.
being
He's saying
facetious,
he's come
and he's
to
being
a realization of this.
Yeah, so Lee Cronin is effectively speaking the way that Sabine Hassenfelder tends to speak about particle physics. It's not that the field is like dumb and everything they're doing is wrong. It's that a lot of them aren't so focused on progress in certain areas anymore. Many people are focused on backing up their own pet theories with respect to how things happened, that they're not really interested in actual research, much like what Sabine Hassenfelder thinks about physics. That's the attitude that Lee Cronin is expressing here.
if we're being honest,
He's
slightly
come to
arrogant.
a
And Dave is right. Sabine Hassenfelder is not saying, yeah, my field is dumb and all the work I do is stupid and pointless. Like, that doesn't make sense. What?
He's come to a realization by looking at the data.
He
the
came to
material
Jesus.
must have come from
He came
outside
to Jesus,
the genome.
everybody. Yes, Lee Cronin is pretending all of his work and that of all.
Uh-oh,
his
here we
work
go.
is meaningless.
Here we go, guys.
James.
Clueless!
Over and over again.
Oh,
You
he
gave
wrote
him-
it on the
You gave him
board.
half of an entire
wrote it on
video,
the
Lee
board.
Cronin.
If I write not clueless, does that win?
Now, see, that was a good one. That was a good one. I forgot about that one. I like that
James,
one.
You're bringing up synthetic biology because you refuse to engage with the actual research of systems chemistry, which is my next prompt. So we're
He's
gonna
the
talk
one
about
who
that.
said synthetic biologists can't
I'd
do
actually
this.
kind of like to
synthetic-
get to that. Where's that at?
Because self-replicating molecules that evolve by natural selection, that sounds just a little too relevant to the origin of life, now doesn't it?
Yeah, tremendous reading skills. I'm telling you, he's reading from
Yeah,
his videos.
you
You
gotta
don't have to
pack
watch
a-
his videos. He just read it. The man cannot speak.
I guess the
chemistry.
research isn't real
He has
because I
people
wrote
writing
words
this
before
text for him when he comes in here.
I
But
guess
let me-
research isn't
okay,
real because
so-
Dave wrote
So
words
let me
and
answer
read
your
them.
question.
You
In
people
your
are
last,
idiots.
in your latest video,
Oh, my Lord.
you said,
No.
because I say, well, why don't you just take a dead cell and bring it back to life? Because at least everything is kind of there. And he says, oh, and he says, but it actually has been done. He actually says the words, it has been done.
James, why are you
He
jumping
has-
to a completely different topic? We're talking
No,
about
but
systems
because
chemistry.
we're talking about cells. We're talking about
The
bringing this
prompt
back to life.
was
This
systems chemistry.
man stood there and said
The
that they
prompt
took
was
dead
systems
cells and
chemistry,
they brought
and
them
he's
back to
talking
life.
about something completely unrelated. Do
No,
you wonder
this is-
why?
this is
Because he cannot address this research. Because he's talking about something totally different. He is a gish galloper, like Kent Hovind. Hey, look over here. We don't want to talk
No,
about
you
this
have
research.
to. You have
We
to
gotta talk
take
about
that
something
and
else.
apply it. You want to apply that. You have to bring. You said that
Is-
dead. Take its leg and keep back articles.
But back to what I was talking about, do you agree that this research shows replicators that evolve by natural selection? Because it does.
No.
Do you?
Because it
Okay,
does.
so Gerald
No.
Joyce is a fraud. You're calling Gerald Joyce a fraud right now? You should
No,
be
because
careful right now.
he doesn't copy DNA. How much of the DNA did he copy? You read the paper. I read the.
Fully self-replicating. Fully
No,
self-replicating.
he did not
Yes.
fully self-replicate
Yes,
it. There
fully
is not more than 10. Show me. Show me.
Gerald Joyce has done a lot of research on amplification and replication of a variety of RNA enzymes and catalysts and stuff like that. I've got actually quite a bit of his research saved because it just completely blows out of the water people like James Tour who don't know what they're talking about.
Show me. You got the
What do you
paper
mean?
there.
And that's the thing. I would consider Gerald Joyce myself. He has to be one of like the leading people in the field. I don't know if he's retired now. I don't know what his age is, but he's got a lot of really, really, really fucking solid research in this field. Gerald Joyce does.
No, show it. No, no.
RNA enzyme, dude, these are completely fully self-replicating.
Without an
You're just
enzyme,
lying.
it has never been shown without an enzyme.
Do you know what self-replicating means?
Without an enzyme, it has never replicated more than 10% of
Autocatalyst,
itself.
An autocatalyst is a catalyst that makes itself. From the prefix.
Mr. Farina,
in
you
Greek.
have the paper. Show us
Okay,
in the paper.
What do you mean show you the paper? This is the paper that
Show
you're
me
pretending.
how much. Did he say that the whole, how much of it was
Fully
copied?
self-replicating. Fully
Not
self-replicating,
fully
James.
self-replicating. Not.
No.
It is not. Nobody has ever
Okay.
copied more than 10% without an enzyme.
But
I don't believe
no,
that.
But
No.
it is. Yeah. So let's see. We've got a lot of these. Where are they?
That is a lot of literature.
Okay,
I'm
well,
not
I
gonna
already
lie.
showed them. Yeah. Self-sustained replication of an RNA enzyme. Cross-replicating RNA enzymes undergo
And
self-sustained
how much
exponential
was
amplification.
replicated?
Huh?
How much was replicated? How much?
Fully replicated.
It is not fully replicated. No
Okay.
way. There is no
What
way.
we're
I
seeing
even
right
asked
now
Jack
is
James.
James.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus.
and
He's wild,
Sleep
man. I tell you
denying.
what.
And you can't bring one back
Switch
to
to
life.
something else, right?
Here's the Q&A. All right.
The formation of polypeptides.
We're going to start on this side. And then we're going to go back.
I actually wrote not clueless on the book.
Mr. Farina, you showed the formation of polypeptides. For the record, did the literature that you cited include examples of using unprotected amino acids that are functional with amino or carboxylic groups?
Yeah, I showed you the one by Powner.
I didn't see anything functionalized with amino
There
or
was no amino
carboxylic
acids
groups
there.
that
They
were
were
free.
unprotected. They were
No,
unprotected.
they were aminonitriles.
No, you're
Dr.
talking about a
Jordan.
completely different paper, James. You're talking about a different synthetic pathway to get peptides where he didn't go through amino acid condensation. I'm talking about a completely different paper where he did indeed get coupling and there was no interference from side chains, even lysine.
I didn't see you show that one.
We
The
talked
ones
about
that
it
you
multiple
showed them,
times.
You showed it was without.
Man, these people
amino-
are crazy. I tell you
amino
what.
and carboxylic groups.
Can
Selective
understand.
peptide ligation that
on this
tolerates
video.
all proteinogenic side chains.
Yeah.
All.
Now my
All
answer to
protein
that
genetics.
is thank you. What she said.
Right.
Next
Thank
question.
You for,
What?
Dr. Torg, firstly, can I write my question on the blackboard?
You have
that's
30 seconds for your question according to the
okay.
moderator.
So if
That
it
was
seems
fucking
like you keep on
hilarious.
saying that we don't know X, we don't know X. So what is your current scientific hypothesis as to the origin of life? And if it's not God, how is that, or if it is God, how is that not a God of gaps?
Scientifically, I have no idea. To say you have no idea doesn't mean that you're saying God of the gaps. Imagine a man in the year 1700. You ask him, are we going to have space flight? How on Earth could he even know that? There was no flight at all, let alone space flight. Are we going to be able to land a man on the moon? He can't say. I am like a man standing in 1700 and you're saying, can we put people on the moon and bring them back? I have no idea. That is not God of the gaps to say you don't know. Everybody wants to say God of the gaps because they want to say that they're very close. And this is why these guys say that they're going to.
You
Please.
Wait,
Yeah,
was there
God
another
created-
question?
So there is a gap.
Oh, no, okay.
Is for both Dr. Tor and Mr. Farina. It's simply put, what is one thing that they admire about each other's scientific career?
Okay, let me start. This man has said multiple times that I have called him stupid. I have never called him stupid because I don't think he's stupid. I have said he's clueless on this topic. I have said he cannot read the scientific literature. That doesn't mean stupid. This man has become a musician, and then he went out, and in 2015, he started an educational site, which is huge. Stupid people can't do that.
Well,
I admire him.
stupid people very much can do that, and that's how you get PragerU. Oh, I cracked myself up. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
This is an educational site, and I have never called him stupid because he's not stupid. He's not stupid. So I admire him for his educational site. And from what I understand, I'm not a musician. From what I understand, what people have said, he's an excellent musician. I admire him for that as well. His wife is here. He's a father. He has 2 children. I admire that a man can have a wife and 2 children and stay married and do these things these days. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I admire that.
Oh, Lord.
I admire the tenacity with which you stick to a script of lies. It's actually quite impressive. I never said Dave was stupid. I just said his content is a manure dump. I just said everything he says is wrong. I said he's clueless. I said he doesn't know chemistry. Although, again, who's used my content to pass his class? Anybody here? That's what I thought, James. He doesn't know chemistry, yet I'm helping your students. Isn't that interesting?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Would you like to retract any of these statements? Or perhaps all of them?
On Origin of Life? No. Does Farina know chemistry? No.
I don't know chemistry.
You have
I
a
don't know
script.
chemistry.
Anybody
Yet I
can
have a
read a
very
script.
sim-
You saw
Oh,
tonight.
this
The
is
man
hilarious.
could not speak without a script. He has people write it. You
Yeah.
could do it. You could do it.
When
you
you
could do
have
it. If they
2
put a
minutes
piece of
to
paper
talk.
in front of
You right?
chemistry.
Next
Every
question.
time I ask him a question, he's going through his. Let me see what I can find.
James,
here.
if you
the man
can't,
couldn't speak.
if you can't admit that every statement on there is complete bullshit, you are admitting your fraudulence
Gentlemen,
for everyone.
we
No,
wanna make sure
I'm not withdrawing any of those.
we wanna
I
make
will
sure
agree with
people
that
have
one.
a chance to ask questions. Next question.
Dr.
Yes, here we go.
Seems like most of your critiques rest on so far
Best!
unjustified assumptions. So I would like to give you the opportunity here to justify at least one of those assumptions. The very first one, your very first question to Dave, seems like you
I don't know who this guy is, but he's a pretty sharp-looking dude, I tell you what.
admit that you can form peptide bonds for some of the amino acids in aqueous solutions without protecting groups. You point out specifically lysine and arginine, and I would like to ask, why are you assuming that lysine and arginine and all 20 amino acids were there from the very first, the origin of life? Yeah, could you just justify that assumption for us? Why couldn't you have life from like just some of the amino acids that later
Spend
on
30
incorporate all
seconds.
20? Okay.
So
That's strange. 30 seconds? Because most places, they usually give you a minute.
my contest on the amino acid claims was he kept saying amino acids are simple to make in water. That's what he said in his series. But then, when challenged on that, he came out later and he said, when activated. When you activate them, they go from being zwitterionic to being non-zwitterionic. This is what I was getting at. So somebody coached him on this. Tour must be right on activation. Now, to your next question. Could there have been life with half of the amino acids? We have no idea. Even with half, even if I gave you half of the amino acids, now what? Now what? Let me tell you. Because if you have
Let me tell you. The old with the finger up and everything like them old preachers. And let me tell you now, son boy.
Chances
fuck.
of chances of that folding, a 100mer. The chances of it folding are
What does wait? Whoa.
10 to the 90. All right.
Okay.
So Leventhal
Time
paradox. So one form. But Leventhal paradox. No way. The vast majority do not fold.
Time is up
They
for
don't
that
fold.
question. Next question on this
What is
side.
full?
So I was just wondering, what's your opinion on Tour just constantly yelling over you, not letting you speak, and just screaming the entire time? Okay, you could not say anything.
Hey, look at everyone
ruptured
doing
my
that right
eardrum.
now to the question, right? Yeah, you guys are.
Yeah,
all
and
the
that's
same.
really all I want to say. I just want to know why. Why do you think he's doing it? Why is he just yelling over you the entire time?
Well, the more he yells, the less I can say, and the less I can prove him wrong. Right? It's a pretty obvious tactic.
Next question.
All right, my question is for Tor. So I was just wondering, when it comes to self-replicating ribosomes, which we talked about in step number 5, and there was a concept of if it was 100% or 10% or 20%. And so my question for you is, how could we set up an experiment to tell how much of a ribosome actually self-replicates, and so we can measure if it's 10 or 100?
Say it will always be less than 10. I presume that we will come to a time when somebody replicates a ribozyme. So what? Now how did you get this ribozyme? The first ribozyme, you have this 2-5 problem. You can't make the ribozyme. You can't do a duplication until you make one. And so here we have it. We can't make the first one. I'm just asking you for the first one.
Fully self-replicating ribozyme was done in 2002 by Gerald Joyce. This is not new chemistry.
It's not true.
Yeah,
Next question.
So.
Next question. This side.
Well, that was funny.
Let me know. I wrote my question out ahead of time so I wouldn't have to, so I could be intentional with my words and not waste everybody's time rambling. Dr. Tor, you spoke of making the charitable choice to treat your interlocutor as you would any
start
grad student.
over again.
Sorry.
I missed it.
Dr.
Say
Tor.
it more slowly.
Dr. Tor, you spoke of making the charitable choice to treat your interlocutor as you would any grad student. Considering the nature of your disagreement and the form of it, in the broader context of the relationship between students and advisors at academic institutions, what is the nature of this graduate student advisor relationship? And does this mean that you treat all of your graduate student mentees in the same manner as Mr. Farina?
That was fucking Dave. Well, holy shit. I must have stopped watching because I didn't watch all of the Q&A. I usually never do. I watch about half of it. But yeah, that one I didn't see that question. That was a good one.
I like that one.
I often confront my graduate students. Often. If you don't like the way I teach, you don't have to work in my group. But I train them very, very well. If they're going to speak nonsense, I will challenge them every time. If they're going to speak nonsense, I challenge them every time. This is education. If it bothers you to be educated, then that's you and your generation. But I'm telling you, this is the way we educate. We challenge people and we challenge them to do well, and we will maintain those standards. And in my laboratory, in my group meetings, we will maintain those standards.
Would you say any of these things to your graduate students?
Next question.
Thank you both for tonight. My question is for Professor Dave. Since Dr. Tor's worldview was a major part of your argument, I'm curious to ask about your worldview. Coming from a more materialistic view of the world, a naturalistic view, a debate presupposes the ability of people to actually think rationally, and I know someone might be tempted to say right now, well, there was no rational thought in this debate. But setting that aside, what do you actually think people are capable of thinking rationally if ultimately all that exists are cells in our brains that react chemically with no meaningful difference from
30
individual.
seconds.
Why is it that when people ask, well, if all we are is this and that and the other, and they're so fucking reductive, like, well, if we're just, molecules in motion, except you're ignoring all of like the emergent features and functions and processes and structures that exist at all the scales in between that are entirely relevant. But sure, take a really, really highly reductivist view with respect to reality. That's totally the right way to understand things, isn't it?
Seconds.
And
Can people think rationally
is
if the
rational
world
thought-
is
how
materialistic?
is rational thought possible in a naturalist world?
We have brains and the way brains work. I mean, I don't. You're trying to pretend that rationality presupposes divinity or something. Is that what you're doing?
Correct. Yes.
So no, I reject that. We exist. We have rational thought. We can observe these things.
Well, see, the funny thing is, I would have loved to answer this question. I would say, well, rationality is given generally in terms of the actions or the behaviors that people have, and whether they are in accord with the norms that they're using to prescribe those same actions or behaviors. So rationality is defined as an agent who is engaged in the actions or the behaviors as prescribed by the norms that they're using to prescribe their actions and behaviors. If you're doing the things that you ought to do, all things considered, at least to the best of your knowledge, you're behaving rationally. Why do we need to move beyond the natural world to understand that? Humans are agents who act. What does divinity have to do with this?
Things. There's no evidence that a God exists, so we can try to explain it physically. Huh? Yeah, and it's not. So, I mean, I just don't know what to say. We have no evidence that a God exists, yet we can use reason.
Okay,
We've been
we're gonna have to
elucidating.
go to the next question.
Okay.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Next question.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm kind of. I came from Georgia just to watch this debate.
That's cool.
My biggest thing is, do you I'm talking to? Do you believe in free will?
That's a good question. I actually don't know. I think I do. No, I don't have a very strong.
So when you say you don't
opinion
know,
on it.
does that mean there's a God of the gaps there?
No, it just means I don't know. But thanks for jumping in there, James. It definitely feels like I do. But then again, I understand the idea of just responding to stimuli in a mechanical way. I feel like a fly doesn't have free will, or a bacterium certainly doesn't. So I don't know at what point free will would emerge. What I do know is that if there's an omnipotent, omniscient God who knows everything you do before he's even created you, you factually do not have free will. So I know that.
That is false. There is no argument that's been given to substantiate that claim, though a lot of people have made it.
Next question.
My question is for Professor Dave. In one of your videos, you stated, how about this approach from Bruce Lepschitz of UC Santa Barbara? He's a synthetic organic chemist just like you, James. He has devised some interesting methods of using to forming peptide bonds in water at room temperature. In response to this, Bruce himself, in an email to Dr. Torr, said, the video, and he's referring to the video you played of him, makes it very clear that he was referring to something done in a hydrophobic, which that means repellent to water.
You'd have to give an... Hold up. What the hell just happened to my screen there? There we go. You'd have to give an argument that shows that precognition alone entails predetermination. You would have to show how God's mere knowledge of future events somehow specifies specifically those events to happen, because there is no logical connection there. So God merely having the knowledge that some event is going to occur does not mean that God decided for that event to occur. The event could be a decision that an agent makes. And the fact that God knows that the agent is going to make this decision at this time in this situation in no way, shape, or form means that the agent didn't choose to do it. It only means that God knows what the decision is going to be. There's no entailment of predetermination contained in mere precognition. God's mere foreknowledge of events is not enough to establish that God causally determined those events specifically to happen.
A hydrophobic pocket.
We're over 30 seconds.
And essentially, my question to you is, do you admit that it actually did not occur in water, but actually outside of water?
Yeah, and I also in that video said that his methodology is not prebiotically relevant. I was just getting a chemist to dunk on James. It's really funny.
Next question.
Like, if you want a clue, then we need a fact and evidence, right? So if we're talking about the origin of life and how this happens, one of the facts and evidence would be the combination of embryology and the molecular clock. And
This guy looks familiar. I feel like I've seen him before. Does anybody know who this guy is? He looks really familiar, no? It's like I vaguely remember him from somewhere, you know?
and the fossil record and so forth, and demonstrated observed evolution and everything, that we know that there's no vertebrates, no terrestrial vertebrates 300 million years ago. There's no land animals at all 400 million years ago. There's no vertebrates at all 500 million years ago, and so on. Protists at best are maybe 1 billion years ago, and prior to that,
we're at 30 seconds.
First microscopic anything's alive would be 3.8 billion years ago, and so there's nothing multicellular for that whole billion years. Wouldn't that be an indication that it happened, since prior to that there's nothing at all?
We are obviously here. So that we are here tells us that something happened. What we are trying to discern is how that might have happened. I don't contest that we're here. I don't contest that there were cells. I don't know what you're getting at. That we are here already tells us that this can be done. From immaterial, you get material. I think we all believe that. We all concede to that.
What? What? No. Huh? What the fuck does... Wait, what? No. But Ed, there isn't any aspect of humans that is non-physical. There are aspects people may contend are, but they can't show them. Not in any meaningful capacity whatsoever. And certainly not empirically, because empirically the exact opposite has been demonstrated in every capacity. So, I don't... What?
Next question.
Hi, my question's for James Tor. So you made a very big deal earlier of the way that there are too many 2,5 linkages in non-enzymatically replicated RNA, but that is, of course, limited to the specific chemical non-enzymatic RNA replication mechanisms that we currently know about. So my question is, does it really seem so extremely unlikely to you that there is some currently unknown non-enzymatic process that yields fewer 2,5 linkages, or that early RNA were still able to form useful structures despite having more 2,5 linkages, or possibly both?
Okay, so certainly there might be chemistry out there that takes oligonucleotides and makes pure 3'5 unbranched RNA. Of course, there might be 3' 5' linked to RNA. Of course, there might be that. What I am saying that as of today, we don't have it. That's all I'm saying. That's not to say that we won't identify that next year. But even if we have the RNA, it doesn't solve the problem. There's many other things that have to happen. You have to get a code to the RNA. The RNA is unstable. Now, most chemists of some temperature is that these because a peptide break and bring it back.
Galloping. Take a look at this. Right, there are mineral surfaces that stabilize RNA and prevent degradation. So. Also well researched. Just another example of James hiding from all the answers that he doesn't want to be there.
Next question.
No, that is on a certain boom.
That
8
protects
hours.
RNA.
8 hours. Any reaction on that mineral. As soon as it gets in water, boom.
That
8
protects
hours.
RNA
8
from
hours.
degradation.
8 hours in water. That's it.
No.
Next
James.
question, please.
No.
Dr. Tor, you've said in podcasts and YouTube videos that you do not claim God as an explanation for the origin of life, and say that one day science may be able to explain all of it.
I said that in my introductory statement.
However, many of your following believe that your criticisms of origin of life is evidence for God. Will you denounce this thinking?
Criticism of origin of life is evidence for God? What did you say? What was the last part?
However, many of your following believe that your criticisms of origin of life is evidence for God. Will you denounce this thinking?
They can think whatever they stinking want to think. I'm not telling what people to think. If you think you should control what people want to think. I am telling you that just because we don't have an explanation for how life originated, I can't, as a scientist, say, therefore God made it magically happen and poofed it into existence. I can't say that as a scientist. That's all I say. I don't tell people what they can believe or not believe. That's up to them.
But
I
that
don't.
is-
This isn't. I'm not the Lord here.
Yeah, but that is what you believe, and that's why you lie about science, to protect that belief.
Thank you. Boo! Boo! Sorry.
Next question,
That's
please.
the case.
That was a good question, though. I like that. I wish he would have asked it more directly, where he said something like, but the criticisms you've levied against origins of life have been picked up massively by a variety of people in the creationist and intelligent design community as evidence for the existence of some form of divine or supernatural creator for life. Do you think that this is a reasonable conclusion to arrive at from specifically your criticisms of origins of life research, or would you tell people that we shouldn't be jumping to these kinds of conclusions simply because we don't understand the origins of life? I would have asked it in a way that really puts him on the spot with whether or not he would denounce people that uses his criticisms and his objections to bolster their religious beliefs.
From learning from you two guys and wanting to be here as a neutral, I wanted to be persuaded and convinced. Thank you, Dr. Tour, because not only have you reassured our doors that are sees the mountain, see if there's
Like
a possibility
what?
for you to look to open today. I wanted to see if there's
Like
a possibility
what?
for you to look.
Okay,
into,
what is he saying that to?
Then from the fallacies, the mountain of fallacies that the gentleman next to you opened today. I wanted to see if there's
Like
a possibility
what?
for you to look into his cosmological work.
Wait,
and-
30
say that again. I
I
missed.
want you to please look at his.
Okay, I don't know what this is. I don't
Ask your
care.
question.
Yeah, the question is work in cosmology.
What work in cosmology? I'm a science
I'm sorry, I don't
communicator.
work in cosmology, but I can't learn another area. I'm sorry about that.
Do you you found my electric universe debunks and you don't like that or something? What do you, oh, okay. So
Next question,
that's another
please.
debate.
Next question,
yeah,
please.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, you found my electric universe debunks and you don't like that or something? What do you?
Yeah, it sounds like he says yeah
Okay, so
to that.
that's another debate.
Next question, please.
Oh, that's fucked
That's
up.
all a bunch of frauds that you're following, but that's fine.
My question is for Dr. Tor. Dr. Tor, given the significance of criticisms that you have on current research in the origin of life field, and given your prolific history of publishing, my question is, why aren't you publishing your critiques in reputable journals? Why are you?
All right.
Why are you denying?
I do remember seeing this question. I think somebody clipped it out and posted it on Twitter or something like that. This one was a really good one.
The benefit of your expertise. Why are you limiting your critiques to Discovery Institute publications and YouTube that the researchers you're talking about don't look at?
30 seconds is over.
Okay.
Nobody cares.
First of all, it's very hard for me to publish a critique that is negative because it has to get through peer review. But that's
Yes, and when your critique isn't rooted in a meaningful understanding of the field and it isn't a well-placed criticism, they're not going to publish it. But there's been criticisms of vast areas of origins of life research that have been published.
That's not the main reason. There have been many critiques like this. So Bob Shapiro wrote critiques. Carnes Smith wrote a whole book on his critique of this. Clement, types of things that I am saying. These guys continue on as if it was never written. I reach the masses. And there is something called social medium that is allowing me to reach the masses that never read the primary literature. I'm not trying to convince the origin of life researchers. I am trying to show the masses that there is another way of looking at this data. I am going after the people that do not read the scientific literature. That
I'm trying to trick people who don't know the research well enough to know that I'm lying to them.
to me is what I want to do. And just so that you know, I'm not a YouTube guy like this guy is. I sit in my office and I work very hard at
You
this.
make a
I'll
lot
turn on my
of YouTube
I'll
videos
turn on
for
my
not being a
camera,
YouTube guy, buddy.
and my camera is on, and I forgot to have the sound turned on properly. It takes me hundreds of hours to do a series like that. I
One
could
second is
certainly
over,
write
Dr. Shore.
articles
Yeah.
in that
So
amount of
the
time.
translation
I've
of this
chosen
is,
to
I
use
can't
this
publish
medium.
my critiques because they're full of lies, so I'll lie to the public instead.
and then Dave just looks at him. Oh, that was fucking classic.
We have time for.
Oh, that fucking side eye. That fucking side eye right there was. Oh, I gotta see that one more time. I'm sorry. Look at this. Oh, that's
We have
fucking
time
beautiful.
for just one more question. Go ahead and
That's
ask your
beautiful.
question, please.
Hi, so my question is for both Dr. Tor and Professor Dave. My question is, I think that this debate has kind of strayed from the original premise of, are we clueless about the origin of life? So if both of you could, using examples from the primary literature, Dr. Tor, I'd appreciate it if you could explain why we are clueless beyond a doubt, that there is no, that we are clueless about the origin of life. And Professor Dave, I'd like you to explain why we are 100% not clueless about the origin of life.
Okay, you go first. Go ahead.
So really, James, all he can do is just write the word clueless a bunch of times. So we're not, right? All this research we've been talking about, despite his objections, we do have prebiotically plausible synthetic pathways to all of the important biomolecules and systems chemistry. It's only been going about 20 years, but again, he pretends the research doesn't exist. I would like to point out he made a 10-hour series about abiogenesis and never brought up replicators once. What more proof do you need how clueless he is and how much he is hiding from this research? We certainly would never say we know exactly how life began. That would be ridiculous, but we are far from clueless. We have a mountain of research. For James to train people to say that we've never done anything since Miller-Urey in the 50s is the most insane lie imaginable. It's been 70 years of incredible research, especially in the past 20, what we've been doing with systems chemistry. It's astounding work. Will we ever figure out exactly how life began? Maybe not. Honestly, probably not. But it's only because we have so many ways it could have happened.
Yep. That is 100% correct. There are so many different pathways through which a variety of these things could have happened that we'll never be able to single out what the particular pathway is that was taken 4 billion years ago on the planet.
Okay, so first of all that astounding work for 70 years. 70 years of Nobel Prizes, both in chemistry and physiology and medicine, which includes biology. That's 70 times 3 with 2 Nobel Prizes. So you've got 210, 420 Nobel Prizes have been given since Miller-Urey was discovered. 0 have been given for origin of life. 0. All this wonderful chemistry. 0. 420.
What is
0.
this?
None have been
What
given.
is
You
this?
don't want me to say clueless? I won't say clueless. How about I just agree with Cronin? Scam. How's that? Because you can't answer this. You can't answer that.
Wasn't he asked to give examples from the primary literature?
That. So I say we're clueless on this. That's why.
Of a lunatic.
Okay.
Okay, well, this concludes the question and answer session.
All right. Okay. I've already gone like 38 minutes over what I initially wanted to, but it was just too good to not keep going. So I'm going to wrap it up here. This debate was a dumpster fire. Dave had some good parts. His attacking the audience and consistent attacks on James, I think. Well, the attacks on James, I think, could have been better worded and better targeted at him in ways that like show like, hey, like that this guy either A, is so incompetent he doesn't understand this, or he does understand it and is just not being honest with people for whatever particular motivations he happens to have for rejecting this research. It didn't come at it that way. James had nothing but a bunch of incessant caterwauling about how nobody understands anything and we're all clueless and you're clueless and you can't do this. So this debate is not how professional debates should be had. I really want to see better next time we see something like this. And with that, we're going to end this one, guys. Thanks for hanging with me and suffering through watching this debate for probably the second or third time for a lot of you, I'm sure. But it's always fun. I don't know what I have planned. I don't know if anybody else has got any streams coming up, so I don't really have anything to shout out at this particular instance. So I guess I will just leave you guys with what has, I guess, become sort of the motto for my channel, because I like the phrase and I think it's really cool. Through reason, we progress. Take care, everyone.